Hi, welcome to my talk on orbit demos for software, manageable or madness. My name is Ryan Plauche and I work for Cambrian Works. This talk is mostly going to be a story about how I prepared to deploy a software demo on orbit, but it's a story hopefully with some lessons. And these lessons all revolve around learning how software can make the process of deploying a software demo fairly manageable, maybe even easy, but hopefully avoiding a descent into madness. So, a little background. The company I work for, Cambrian Works, is a new space software company. We're trying to bring some products related to space networking to the market. And I think, like many other new space companies, we've found that when you attempt to bring a product to market in the space industry, the thing that everyone wants to see is flight heritage. They want to know that your product is flown before they'll pay you to fly it. So you have to figure out a way to obtain this heritage before your product can really be marketable. So how do we get this elusive flight heritage? Pretty universal challenge across seemingly all companies in the space industry, unless you own the whole getting to space mechanism yourself. So some different methods, you can find someone willing to gamble on your product, willing to give it a shot. Maybe you give them a deal in exchange for a chance. You could build a whole spacecraft just to demonstrate your product. You also could just buy a whole rocket, just take control of the whole thing yourself. Or alternatively, if you are building a pure software product like we are, you could attempt to buy time and space on an existing spacecraft. And that is what we did at Cambrian. We have an employee who knows a guy who works for a company that had a aging spacecraft, and we were able to secure an opportunity, let's say, not a guarantee, but a possibility to deploy our software onto this old spacecraft that was approaching end of life. So once we knew we had a potential opportunity, we needed to answer some questions to really go through with this and make this thing happen. We needed to know what it would take to get our software running on the spacecraft, and we needed to know how we were going to deliver our software to it. We also wanted to make sure that this was a really smooth process. This partner we're working with is a company that one of our employees was close to, several of our employees actually, and we wanted to make sure that we maintained a good relationship there and didn't do anything too crazy in this demo process that would burn those bridges. So we needed to make this like a smooth, clean process as much as we could. So the first question here is, can our software even be built for this spacecraft, for this environment? Our partner delivered to us a dev kit consisting of a VM and an engineering model. That VM had a cross compiler and some source for the kernel and different utilities, which was helpful. Later on in the process, we'll talk more about that. So first we needed to see, can we even cross-compile our software for this target, for this architecture and environment, and then will it even attempt to run? Will it start up? So our software is written in Rust, and what we found is that for this particular environment, cross-compiling Rust was not too bad. So the target environment was a 32-bit ARM processor running Linux. And one really nice thing about Rust, something that really helped us out here, is that Rust tends to statically link in external dependencies, which meant that we didn't have to worry about installing packages for all of our external dependencies on this system. Those were all statically linked into our binary. We also made the choice to use musl libc as an alternative to glibc. And this, again, was an advantage in this situation because musl libc is statically linked into our binary We're not dependent on the system version of glibc matching up with what our software is expecting. And luckily, this 32-bit ARM target using muscle was a working Rust target. So at least from the Rust perspective, things were compilable and were going to work. And this kind of set us up to have a pretty portable binary that, in theory, was not too dependent on other things being in place on the system or compatibility with libraries that already existed on the system, since a lot of that was already just being compiled directly into our binary. So once we established that we could compile things, and we loaded this onto the engineering model, and we found that our software would start, but it would not actually run. It would die pretty quickly. So at this point, we had to start digging into the hard dependencies that we do have in our software. And a lot of this ends up being specific kernel functionality. Like I said, we're building space networking software, and we rely on some interesting networking functionality that the kernel can expose. So we needed to make sure all that functionality was there. Now, this particular system was running an older kernel in the 3.2 line, which is from about 2012. And on the engineering model, we found there were no kernel modules present. This is what we rely on typically, is building kernel modules. So there were some questions here about whether the functionality we needed would actually exist in this kernel, and whether we could actually build kernel modules that were loadable on the unit. So the path that we went down here for building these modules, if you recall, in our dev kit, we were given a VM by the partner, and inside of that VM, there was source for building the kernel, and then there was the whole build root source, which includes the ability to build a cross-compiling toolchain, and then build the kernel or build kernel modules using that toolchain. So in the process of figuring this out, did I start out in the VM manually typing commands until working kernel modules popped out? Yes, I absolutely did. And it was honestly kind of a nightmare trying to figure out what all I had done. But it did eventually work. And I think I looked like the man in this image as I was sorting through different commands in this VM and copying things back and forth to my computer. Could I have done this a better way? Almost certainly. So this manual VM manipulation was very messy and not very reproducible. I was really the only one who could do this. So what I ended up doing was I took the build root source and the kernel source out of the VM, and I created a Docker image that approximated the environment of the VM and pulled the build root and kernel source into that, and ended up with a Docker image that had all the things I needed to build kernel modules. I then wrote a bash script to tie all this together, and what this allowed me to do was have a custom kernel config sitting outside of Docker specifying just the bits I wanted to modify instead of the entire kernel config. And then I could just copy that over inside of the Docker container and build just the kernel inside of there. And this was much faster than booting up the VM and trying to copy things through a shared mount or what have you. And this really allowed me to iterate very quickly and eventually find the right set of kernel modules that were required for our software and get that barrier out of the way. So the next barrier that we ran into was that our software does rely on a few other system utilities such as iperf3 and iproute2. So sometimes these utilities didn't exist on the target system. Sometimes they did, but perhaps it was not a version that had the features that we required. So luckily, this Docker image that I had constructed had build root inside of it, all of the build root source for this target. And Builder, in addition to allowing you to build kernel modules, will also allow you to build utilities for a target system. So the next thing I knew, I had a few more bash scripts that would configure Builder inside of Docker to cross-compile these utilities and just pop them out. And then I could move those cross-compiled binaries over to the system, and one by one was able to knock out these different dependencies and get things working. And, again, because of this Docker workflow I'd established, there was no mucking around in the VM required. So at this point, we had software that was running. Everything seemed to be okay inside of the EM, but our deliverable was a little concerning. It consisted of kernel modules, utilities, and our own binaries, and these were spread kind of all throughout the system. They weren't just contained in one neat place. So, of course, what we did is we just tarballed all these up and sent them over. And yeah, that would be a mess. That would be a great way, I think, to really upset our partner, was to give them a tarball that would pollute their system. We also could have created a custom packaging solution at this point, but that didn't quite seem right either. So what I was able to do is I looked around on the target system and found that opackage was there, which is a stripped down, kind of more embedded friendly version of apt or dpackage. And I was able to leverage that inside of this tool I was constructing for building these demos, these demo binaries. And by inserting opackage into the equation, I could then build demo packages very easily that were compatible with this package manager on the system, and was even able to include scripts in the pre-install and post-remove of these packages that would back up and restore any files that we overwrote while creating our demo. So this is good, right? We have software that runs on the VM. We have a very polite way of packaging it and delivering it. We've tested on a twin machine at the partner's facility. What could go wrong at this point? Well, it went wrong. So there was a Wednesday. We had just heard back about the flight opportunity. It sounded like it was going to happen, except that it was going to be on a slightly different spacecraft. And our software was crashing on the local twin of this new spacecraft. And even the kernel modules weren't even loading on this local twin. So it was Wednesday, and our BD guy told me that we needed to have a working version by Friday, or we might miss out on a flight opportunity here. Oh, and also the kernel source for this new spacecraft was lost. It didn't exist. So our modules weren't working, and we couldn't build the kernel for this new spacecraft. So, everything was fine. It's going to be okay. Yeah. So at this point, this is where the tooling that had been coming together over the course of this project really came in handy. I think this is where manual work in this one-off VM really would have led to madness. It would not have been a good situation. So at this point, my little demo builder and packager was getting pretty stable. Things were feeling pretty smooth there. I was able to recover the kernel config for the new spacecraft, which felt like a miracle when that happened, and was very quickly able to write a new script that would inject that new config into my Docker image and spit out some new modules that were working, and quickly iterated over a few other things with a new EM for this new spacecraft, and got the demo working, which was wonderful. And we got it delivered, and a few weeks after handing it off, we got word that things were deployed and executed in orbit, and everyone at the office partied a little bit. Just a really great feeling having that first demo of a new software product on orbit, especially after having dug through a lot of weird kernel and utility build issues for an older system, and also knowing that there was a really smooth process behind this that in the end allowed us to quickly iterate and deliver these demo packages without losing our minds. So, quick review of the software that made this a manageable process. So our software was built in Rust and compiled using this muscle libc, and this really reduced our concerns about binary compatibility with libc on the target system and dependency installation and dependency compatibility on the target system. This demo builder that evolved over time, which ended up being a Rust application that wrapped some bash scripts that were inserted into a Docker container to build kernel modules and different utilities. This allowed for super fast and reproducible iteration. And I think without this, it would have taken a lot longer to find the right combination of kernel modules and utilities. And without this, I don't know that I could have responded quite as quickly whenever we had the turn of events, the change of target system there at the end. And then, of course, O-Package. This is our local packaging hero on the target system. O-Package really allowed us to build something that could easily be deployed and easily removed once our demo was over. And this was really important because we didn't want to make a chore for our partner after the demo was done. We wanted things to be very smooth and easy for them when it came to installation and removal of our demo. So some takeaways for software builders. Building software for these systems is already very difficult. There's already a lot of complications here. So try to build software that makes things less difficult for the next person, even if that person is just the future you. If possible, pick a programming language and ecosystem that makes cross-compiling and multi-architecture deployments easier, not a burden. Research the environment you're deploying to and take advantage of anything that's already available that will help you out. Docker, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it can be very useful for packaging up build environments and usually is much smaller than a VM. And lastly, create tools which automate your build and packaging workflows so that you can create a tight iteration cycle. That's all I've got. Thank you so much.